I think probably page by page would be easy.
Okay.
So, page 1 on the number 1 we just talked about. There was action sketch in number 4. No, this time. Undertaking actions, yeah. And then number 6, you guys are going to
Right.
write the cover letter?
There'll be a cover letter that,
okay.
Just like there was in the last, in the current plan.
Street names are clear in adoption.
For number 7, I think given the timing of what we got going here, I think if we start to work on the presumption that the effective date will be June 30. That's the last possible day that we're shooting for,
right.
And there's no reason to expedite us. I'll craft it with the June 30 date.
So even though we may adopt it on the 24th, right?
The statutes indicate a legal notice has to be published.
Right.
That gives staff about a week to get the legal notice in the paper, and then the effective date of the plan would be June 30.
Okay.
Anything else on page 1?
No, and I can see it. How about you guys? No?
No.
How about on page 2?
Are you going to be able to, on 17, are you going to be able to get statistics for Meriden?
Remember that came up at the,
right,
at the chamber meeting,
right?
And in anticipation of the possibility that might that comment might materialize again, the data tables in that initial section where Bristol's compared to surrounding towns, the same data is in tabular form for Bristol and about 6 or 7 other similar kind of communities. What did we have? I think we had Manchester.
Essentially, the tables.
New Britain and Meriden.
Yeah, so essentially what we did is we went through the state database in terms of the 2010 census and looked at communities of similar size to Bristol, and then we kind of winnowed that list down based on communities which are sort of similar, if you will, to, because Greenwich is a similar size, but it's not really a reference point. So the communities that we've added into the database for comparison are Hamden, Bristol, West Haven, Meriden, New Britain, East Hartford, and Manchester.
That was good. That was good. Yep.
And I think on all the tables where we're comparing ourselves to the surrounding communities, we've added the data for the other communities. And I think it does provide a good reference point. We shouldn't just be comparing ourselves with surrounding, we should be comparing ourselves to like.
Yep.
And so I think, again, the data's collected, I think it's good.
What's kind of interesting, though, and it's reflected in the list of comments, is that you may recall there were speakers who said you should compare Bristol to similar communities,
right.
And then there was at least one other speaker who said you shouldn't compare Bristol to similar communities.
Because we aspire to be
right, to be
kind of
Race to the bottom,
right.
Number 20.
Right.
So
You almost can't,
can't win.
Can't win.
But I think that the feeling was that there's some value to see how you stack up, both within your region and when you compare yourself with communities that people will tend to associate with communities like Bristol, the New Britons and the West Havens and Manchesters and the like.
Well, I think it's also good to compare us with other surrounding towns, just because if we are going to aspire to something else, what our competition looks like.
And this is very much an aspirational document.
Good.
Anything else on 2?
And again, I don't think we had any issue with 21 and 22 in terms of providing some additional explanation about jobs and the like in Bristol. If I can, we can just go back to item 15 on that page. The suggestion about using the sidebar technique to explain how Bristol fits into a region in terms of its connections with other regional kinds of agencies. So don't know that it has to be in the main body, but I think making reference to the fact that Bristol doesn't function in isolation. It does have regional connections, and to highlight those.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's in on that page, page 3. Yeah, at 26, that was brought up at our meeting.
Yeah, and that's that statement about park is in the 2000 plan, but it was in the parks an open space section, and this is in the open space section, probably, at this point in time, it's probably just delete it.
Yep.
It doesn't really provide any, much additional
Right, 'cause
information.
it's really not a park.
And there is already in the plan a policy concerning the Pequabic River. You've been requested through public comment to kind of beef that up, to emphasize more the value of the Pequabic River and its potential value as a
Yeah, I think that was brought up.
an economic development
in Westminster
driver as well.
too, you know.
Right.
That was brought up when we were doing it.
So I guess, well, I'm a little unclear on the change you're proposing.
Which one's for this,
What
Paul?
number?
28?
28.
Yes, the comment was made, I think could have been, by the chamber, that the plan didn't recognize some of the work that had happened, or the aspirations for the Pequabic River and Riverwalk. And I think that it actually is touched upon in section 5.3, number 3C, and so I think we just expand that language out to say that that language...
Yeah, I have that. Seek opportunities to increase public access to the Pequabic River corridor for both open space and recreational purposes.
So just...
So it does raise the question, what else get put in?
I mean, I guess the question is, well, all these things we're going to do with the Pequabic River, what are they? What are all these goals that supposedly are going to use the public?
No, well, I mean, the chamber's just saying that they think this idea of focusing or recognizing the Pequabic River is underrepresented in the plan. So I think we're just going to highlight that text to show the chamber and other people that the Pequabic River is recognized in the plan. And if people want to continue to talk about new ideas for the Pequabic River, they'll find something in the plan that would support that activity. So it's not a fundamental change. It's a clarification. Anything else on 3?
It does raise a question. Do you add language to this, or do you move it up the hierarchy? Or?
I would move it up the hierarchy. I think it is in a logical place right now. I think give me a chance to... I think addressing the comment is important. If you'll allow me to craft some language, you'll get a chance to read it and say, yeah, I like that, or you know what, no, that's garbage, take it out.
You're not talking about the uses of the Pequabic River, fishing, boating, anything like that?
No. I think that...
Voting on what?
The rocks.
Well,
tubing.
Look at this. It could be, right now it says seek opportunities to increase public access. And it may be the policy is increase public access.
Public access, yeah.
To the Pequabic River. Take out seek opportunities to, and just say increase public access.
Right,
So
how
that's
that
it.
happens.
Right, so that's the
It's up to
policy,
people.
is to increase public access.
Yep.
You can say to and along the Pequabic River. How's that?
Yeah, along, yes, along.
To and along. No.
And on 29, you said about the word adequate. You're going to talk about that later on.
I think that they feel the word is too fuzzy, but I think if you take the word adequate out, it doesn't provide any sort of direction. The question is, what is adequate should be debated and discussed depending on the financial condition of the city, the strength of the opportunity that exists, and decide.
How many years have gone by and what's really taking place? And
So I felt that taking the word adequate out weakened the statement, provide open space. It doesn't do anything. So the issue is there should be some measure, some aspirational thing, but we don't have to define it, X% or anything else.
You remember that came up when we met with the chamber, and our point in response was, just as there may be people on the chamber who say, 15 or 20% is fine, there are people who are open space advocates who are going to say, no, we should have, if we can get 60 or 70% open space, that's the way we should go. So,
And the definition of open space is open to interpretation also. We have 2 members here who have differing opinions on that.
yeah.
I believe so.
Chamber.
But that's for another night.
So we're taking out the word adequate?
You can use whatever you want. All right.
Okay, moving right along.
good.
District.
So on to page 4.
Anything on page 4?
30 through 32 are easy fixes.
Right.
Yep.
You know, it does turn out that Copper Ledges and Chimney Crest is in fact a district. It's like two pieces of property with like 4 buildings,
Yep.
these 2 old estates, but they're not separately listed on the National Register. They're actually a district made up of these 2 properties.
Okay.
So.
33, that sounds interesting.
Well, Glenn and Bob and I talked about this. The only authorization that I can find in the state law for the kind of commission that I think that Cheryl Barb was talking about
Right.
is what's known as a Historic Properties Commission. There's a historic district. The state law allows you to establish a local historic district, which we have, where all the properties are, you know, along the same set of streets, and they're all contiguous with one another, and it's a district with a boundary.
Right.
The state law also appears to allow a community to establish a historic properties commission, which works like a historic district commission, but the properties that they can that they have jurisdiction over are not necessarily contiguous with one another. There might be one in this neighborhood and one over here and one someplace else, and they would have the same kind of jurisdiction that the local historic district would have. But these are properties that are, it could be one property, it could be 20 properties, but they're not necessarily near one another or next to one another.
It wouldn't be the whole district.
No, it could be a piece of property in Forestville, it could be one in the West End, it could be another one up on Chippens Hill.
How do those properties get identified? They have to be listed?
They're part, they go through the same process that they go through to define a historic district. There's going to be a study and a...
So it's the same thing, only they're scattered instead of
Correct.
all in one place.
Correct.
See, I wasn't sure I got the sense that this is what she was looking for. I got the sense that what she's looking for is a commission or group or entity in town that it's going to advocate for preservation.
Right.
And I think what Al and I were talking about is that there really is no clear state enabling legislation for something like this. So is the city about to establish something like this? Should the plan recommend a kind of a committee with this function? The plan identifies this issue about, you know, protecting historic resources and talks about who's responsible for doing that. So,
What's the downside of making the recommendation?
well, the verb here is investigate. So it's a
Oh, I
fairly,
understand that, and I don't...
it's a fairly
You changed it
weak-
to recommend, and you made it, and gave it a little bit of teeth. What's the downside to the recommendation?
I don't see anything.
And just, you know, if you make the recommendation, and it goes through, and they make the Preservation
Historic
Commission
Properties Commission.
for institutional memory, and they can make, that commission, I would imagine, can make recommendations at best.
No.
All right.
No, it's a different, again, Historic Properties Commission are, municipalities in Connecticut are enabled to create Historic Properties Commission. They have regulatory powers. Okay? They function like a local historic district commission. So they have regulatory powers. I think where we're unclear is, I thought that was what Ms. Barb was looking for. There's certainly nothing that precludes, you know, as is true in many communities, for, you know, groups of private citizens to create a local preservation trust. That's a nonprofit organization. They advocate for historic preservation. They may, you know, they may be a body that, you know, municipal agencies turn to for advice and suggestions and all, but they're not a municipally sanctioned body.
Right.
Okay? It's not unlike the Connecticut Trust for Historic Preservation. It's not a state agency. It's a private, nonprofit organization that functions as, you know, statewide.
Given that, I think that investigating the possibility is dead on.
Of a historic,
Weak enough.
Of a-
At least you put something in there, but it's,
of a historic properties commission?
no, establishing.
But there's no such thing as,
preservation.
there's no such thing as a
I
preservation.
think we're splitting hairs here. This is, Alan and I may agree to disagree. I don't think she's looking for a Historic Properties Commission. I don't think she's looking for anything whether it's blessed by state statute or not. What she's asking for is an advocacy group
Right.
that she feels will protect historic resources. Whether there's statutory language for it or not, she doesn't care. The question is, should the plan advocate for
that
that?
terminology regardless. She wants a committee, really.
Well, but again...
She wants it a formal city committee.
You're right.
Well, but is that, again, I know we're splitting hairs. If it's a city committee, I mean, I guess you could have a city committee that, you know, makes a bunch of recommendations, but there's nothing in state law that enables towns to form those kinds of commissions.
7148 general municipal powers. Commissions can do whatever, committee can do whatever they want. So I think, at this point in time, I think this is what you asked for. Either we go with this or we say change not recommended. But what's the commission's pleasure on this?
I don't mind leaving it the way you wrote it.
As a preservation commission? What does that mean?
Well, here's what I'm going to suggest. We're going to take out the capitals.
Okay.
Investigate the possibility of establishing a commission to advocate for preservation of historic resources.
Fine.
Hey, done.
Fine. All done.
Yeah, that'll work.
I did.
I think that's what she said.
You are the wordsmith.
Ooh, I grew up in Canada. That's kind
I-
of scary.
well-
With all of Alan's edits on my previous writing, I don't want to take that moniker.
Commission will do what it chooses to do. I think it's a misdirected recommendation, but fine. I mean, I think if she or others who are interested in historic preservation want to create a local organization, private nonprofit, that takes public stances on this stuff, I think she and others are welcome to do that. I'm not quite sure why the plan would recommend that.
Well, the possibility.
No.
Okay. Move on. Move on. Number 37. Wasn't Memorial Boulevard placed on something? It was
It's on
a state register.
State register.
State register, okay.
No tree committee?
No.
Want one?
No, I'm good.
Maybe it's a free commission.
We can talk.
We can tie that.
Are we going to recommend or investigate? Let's move here.
I support the investigation possibility.
Page 5.
Item 40 is actually on page 68, and the suggested language, the word, it wasn't intended to be building expansion, it was intended to be business expansion. So the recommendation would be to modify section 836, number 1, to read, while also encouraging appropriate business expansion.
That was a typo, I apologize.
41, discuss.
So in this section of the plan here, there is information available. It's really sort of this table in the POC day. And it talks about possible roles for a downtown. So it has a role described. This is on page 58, 59, for example. It has a description. And then there was this assessment of Bristol's potential. And the assessment was, a comment was made that this might limit in some way, shape, or form somebody's willingness to tackle one of these roles for the downtown. So if this says the potential is low, what if they think it's better than that and they would like to do it? That this verbiage could be discouraging. So I think, certainly for the downtown, we don't want to discourage activities. We would like to encourage people to think about the alternative roles of a downtown. So one solution for the commission to consider here is to delete the columns, the last two columns on the right-hand side. Another option would be to leave them in and give them, some sort of flexible language that says, possible assessment or something else like that. But
And take out the words, very good, fair, and low. and-
Take them out, I mean, that's an...
Just take those two columns out.
So what you have is the role and the description, and that's it. So that you're not adding a subjective
You're not labeling
opinion
it.
about
Right.
about whether one is feasible or not feasible.
Hmm. Interesting.
So if you took those columns out, you would just have the headings.
And so the description would be, the following table outlines some of the potential roles for a downtown, period.
Right.
I guess, based on what? In other words, how did you choose these and not?
Professional literature in terms of the types of roles or functions that downtowns around the country undertake. Some are, much more focused on office, some are much more focused on other functions or other mixes of activities. But this is sort of a way to start to think about our downtown as being comprised of different elements.
And every city and every downtown would be very variable, depending on the type of downtown.
And so when it came time, the assessment, if you will, of Bristol's potential was something that I had thought through and said, okay, this is where I think Bristol has greater opportunities than others. So those words are mine. If the commission leaves them in a sense, they become the commission's words. And that's where I think that I wanted to make sure that we discussed this matter. And you said, listen, I would not want to discourage people in the future. Or you might say, you know what, these words are, we could go to a categorization system of higher and lower. And just say these things are perhaps better than others. So there's different ways that it can be cast. But we can even eliminate these 2 pages if you think they're potentially controversial. But I didn't want to just go ahead here without giving the commission a chance to weigh in.
So we left these in, other than taking out the last 2 columns for Bristol's potential. I mean,
Just gives a lot of
it
options,
just gives a lot of options, right?
and they're not decisions.
No, good or bad, or
I
high or
think
low.
it covers everything, too.
Right.
Just take the subjective part out, it makes sense, leave it in.
Yeah.
So who knows, maybe the Whalers are coming back to Connecticut, and they're going to pick Bristol.
Or maybe.
And maybe not, but,
Minor league baseball.
But if you look on page 59, for example, one of the items is sports active recreation, active recreation facilities such as arenas, sports venues, fields, etc. And that's identified as low. I suspect there'd probably be people out there saying, no, given Bristol's affinity for sports,
Yep.
that might be, to say that it's low, it just doesn't seem appropriate. So rather than start to re-rank these things, it may just be, here are the things that you could get in the kinds of things you get in your downtown, the purpose they serve, and sort of makes it clear that these are the kinds of things that the city should be looking for as it pursues downtown revitalization.
I think you might want to look at just editing that first sentence a little bit to say.
Depending on what the commission
If it's
decides.
something that Planometrics or staff dreamed up, this is what experts have seen, and this is what other downtowns have done, just where this came from.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Like, given the experience of other communities with it, these are the kinds of things that are...
you had talked about editing that out, where you just edit out the second half of that first sentence.
Yeah, but I think Paul's advocating for, and I think it's a good idea, is to say, an introduction even to that first sentence. It says, based on information from cities around the country, from Urban Lane Institute and other sources, these are some of the roles that downtowns can serve, and then list them.
Okay.
Right, so then then it's not just simply, we picked them out of a hat.
Correct.
There's
Sourced.
yeah.
Thoughts?
I like that.
I like editing this, putting in the information where you,
Okay, so
the basis of the
delete
information, and getting rid of the...
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, thank you. Anything else on page 5?
The prohibition on the crippling effect for drive-throughs. Does anybody feel there was any validity to that?
I thought, given the discussion we'd had of downtown, I thought we'd covered that, which is why I noted no change recommended. But I think this is why they put the list together to give the commission a chance to talk this out.
He was just one voice.
Well, the three here, they're basically saying the same thing.
Well, I think they're all potential people that would like to see another development, that they have the opportunity to possibly do something different if it's allowed. But
Okay.
I just don't see where that makes a big difference. One way or the other.
Well, apparently it does to some of the developers.
But downtown isn't simply about the developers, it's about
Right.
the community as a whole.
I understand, and the developers are a very important part of the community.
But
They're people too.
People that
But-
make
but they're-
things
but they're-
happen. Yeah, they are people
Right.
too.
What do you think's going to happen if and when McDonald's goes in there with a drive-through for Carpenter?
Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts, yeah.
Will happen?
Well,
I don't think anything will happen. He has it, it's the last one that was approved under the regulations, and
Right.
he's alive, if he materializes, it
Those prior,
materializes.
prior regulations to put one in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I just want to...
He gets the last one.
Okay.
It would seem that we're just adding regulation, or we're making a point of saying no drive-throughs where it should at least be allowed as a consideration.
The issue is dead with the zoning commission for
Right.
now.
Okay.
It's dead with the commission. I understand why the comment was made. I consider the sources. I look at the bigger picture. It's a dead issue,
Okay.
at least for the moment.
Number 49, under the comments, perhaps the chamber should leave this, but no change was recommended. Then special service district.
A number of communities have done those. This is an informational box which is in the plan, which describes what a special services district is. I think that, I'm not sure that we need a special services district in downtown today, but my hope would be that as the visions of downtown start to come to fruition, a special services district is something that might get some traction. And I think the purpose of that information box in the plan was to point people to the statutory authorization, and CCM and other places and other communities like Bristol are great sources of information about it. And it's quite possible the chamber might lead this effort. So I didn't think we needed to do anything more right now. I just felt that we were laying it out there as something that might be beneficial at some point in the future.
Okay. Anything else? Page 6. So you're taking 54, 55, 56, and 57 as one group.
Well, I think that the idea here, they kept coming back to this concept of reducing barriers to business development. And I think the regulation, the plan doesn't use those exact words, but the whole idea was, let's take a look through the zoning regulations for the business zones, or let's, I guess, advocate that the zoning commission do this, so that we make sure that we have good regulations in place, and we're not... I mean, one of the things that hit me as working on the plan was the 3 different industrial park districts. I don't see why Bristol really needs 3. And the fact is, we could actually consolidate, perhaps find a way to remove some of the fine distinctions on uses and actually be more business friendly in that regard. And I would encourage that. So that comes part of this concept of the review, rather than calling it reducing barriers, which I felt was...
And I think as an extension of that, you can do the same thing with the business zones. There are 4 different business zones. They serve 4 different functions. They have 4 overlapping, but in some instances, dissimilar uses. Some are allowed by right, some are allowed by special permit. And I think the recommendation in the plan for the city, to the zoning commission to, revisit its regulations in regard to commercial development and make sure that the zoning boundaries on the zoning map are where you want them to be, that the kinds of uses that are allowed in each of the zone are appropriate for those zones, that the way in which you regulate the uses. And again, it kind of gets back to the drive-up window, but again, as part of that discussion, it may be that certain kinds of uses that are now allowed by special permit perhaps should be allowed by right, and vice versa. So I think the idea of recommending or advocating for a revisitation of the zoning, the business and industrial portions of the zoning regulations begins to get at those issues.
Okay. I don't see anything else.
Well, page 7.
See 7? I'm okay with, 65, 66, 67 in terms of, the linear.
I think the language that's in the draft is a carryover from the 2000 plan.
Right.
And I think some of the concern about the language in here is probably on point, and I don't think that if you take out number 6, if you take out the reference to multifamily units and the references in 7 and 8 to encouraging neighborhood stabilization, I don't think you weaken the intent of either of those or any of those 3 policies. In fact, you may make them a little bit more clear that in stable single-family neighborhoods, the idea is that you're not going to allow single-family development. You're not going to allow things other than single-family development, except either at the fringes where it provides a transition, like to a commercial or multifamily zone, or to preserve historic buildings. Schools are a good example of that. You may have a single-family neighborhood. Jennings School is a good example. You have what's essentially a single-family neighborhood. You have a building in that neighborhood, and the intention is going to be to use it for multifamily housing. So that would certainly be consistent with this policy and vice versa. So I don't think you're undermining, if you delete the phrases that are identified here, I don't think you're undermining the intent of any of the policies, and probably strengthening it a bit. And
I agree with you.
with that, I need to leave. I have a zoning commission meeting at 7. You're in good hands, and I'll get a full report, I'm sure, from Bob and Glenn.
Okay, there's nothing else on that page.
No.
Nobody wants to take another look at Riverside Avenue.
Bill number 62.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming, guys. See you guys later. Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
Well, we actually specifically referenced Riverside Avenue, didn't we?
Not really, and I felt that these comments were quite specific. I think the gentleman who made these comments was a real estate broker, and it sounded quite specific in terms of car repair, car sales, car rental. And I felt I didn't see a strategic issue for the plan. I felt it was kind of getting down to more of a zoning tactical issue, and I wasn't sure whether or not you wanted to make a recommendation for the zoning commission on this issue. So the recommendation, again, for your consideration, was no change recommended. But
Yeah, I can't recall what we said on the Route 72 study, because that was part of Route 72, Riverside Avenue, if we said anything. It might have been mentioned in that study, but I
Right.
can't remember what it was.
That's interesting.
I know we restricted it along for 72 corridor
Right.
for the new area.
And since the
I
Route
don't-
72 study is incorporated in the plan, if there is something in it that's specific and nothing's coming to mind off the top of my head, it's already addressed his comment.
And along Riverside Avenue, there are some auto repair and some of those things from a standpoint of that.
Small machine shops,
Small, right.
like lawnmowers and stuff, yeah,
But grandfathered in though.
Right.
right.
Okay.
Nothing else in 7. 74. No references made promoting the goals and findings. I know they brought that up.
Well,
I mean,
the study's incorporated into the plan.
So, I
I
don't
think
think
we
we
have some flags around, I don't know.
Yeah, were they looking for something
Yeah,
more
I don't know.
concrete? Because
It would seem to me that
promoting goals and findings.
there's a couple of places in the plan where this issue about the land uses along Route 6 come up. And I think it also...
Well, we were talking about
West End.
74.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You were opening up a whole other can of worms.
Oh. No, I think the West End study is incorporated, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we did talk about it.
Yeah.
I think they
On
just...
page 96.
Yeah, they just look for promoting goals and findings. Well, I mean, it's a whole study.
You got that whole box that pretty much summarizes.
Right.
Mhm.
What more do you want?
And what's happening there now is all, part of the association and what they do to enhance the neighborhood and stuff, so.
We're talking about the road, how they're going to reconfigure it.
Yeah. So I
don't see anything else.
don't
in
see
8.
anything there.
No.
So you ready to go to 73?
Everyone's use as a field, this is the
72
mixed
and
use.
73.
Alan and I think Bob had a chance to talk with Alan today too on this one. We recognize how sensitive those sections of Route 6 are in terms of what the future could be, and there can be alternative visions as to what could happen on that section of roadway. And some people are afraid of the residential along commercial, some people are afraid of the commercial along residential.
Right.
I think there are a lot of repercussions on that section of roadway related to driveways, curb cuts, the conflicting traffic movements, the neck down of the road, and the other things that go on.
Sidewalks, no sidewalks.
And so what we talked about today on the phone is that what we should really do here is make sure that the text in the plan that deals with this area all focuses in on this Route 6 study and say, listen, the Route 6 study's got a lot of issues all the way from Plymouth to Farmington, but this area in particular is a very sensitive one that really should be evaluated in terms of all of the implications, turning movements, traffic, appropriate property use, property maintenance, et cetera, and to make those cross-references.
Good yourself.
Have a seat.
Howdy.
How are you? Hey, Rob. How are
The
you?
meeting's upstairs.
I like that.
Meeting's upstairs?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
in
sorry.
council chambers.
Council chambers?
Yep.
Okay.
You'll see Alan up there.
Okay, next floor up?
Next floor up? Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
I go
Okay.
so automatically, I don't even know.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
So you're talking about like a West End study to do a Route 6 study?
Mhm.
Something like that?
Like a Route 72 study,
And
which
then Route
was
72 study?
exactly. So if we start thinking about highway corridors in Bristol, they've kind of been evaluated over the years,
Mhm.
72 and 229, but Route 6, not quite so much.
And now that things have changed dramatically along that whole corridor, start to finish,
Yeah.
it is time probably to do a study.
You know, the one thing you always kept talking about, and it hasn't, they talk about it a lot, is where Stafford Avenue is, where Stephen Pontiac is trying to expand the lanes there, but I don't know if that could ever happen. But they always talk about it, because that's what a bottleneck is.
Well, the state's got a study.
I think they're going to do it.
Mhm.
There's a project going on.
Design
In that
it right
area,
now.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, the bottom of the hill, after Stafford Avenue, you head down the hill to where
Right.
Dunkin' Donuts is, really from there, all the way west of Farmington
Yeah.
is where they're undertaking these improvements. And you got these maps over here on the
Oh.
cubicles, which are actually showing what's being proposed there.
Oh,
But
okay.
this is also going to start to increase the pressure on other parts of Route 6. And that's
Right.
why, talk in the plan about the fact that you get west of down, did I just say west before? I meant east. But now west of downtown, as you head out towards Plymouth, it's a much different character on that
Oh.
section
It is.
than it is over on this
Oh,
section.
definitely.
So understanding sort of these segments and evaluating what's the right thing to do. Because if we have 4 lanes over here and 2 lanes over, do we want the 2 lanes to go to 4? No, not really. So this is again where the study could, it helped us with 72 and it could help us with Route 6 as well.
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
So I think what I'm advocating here as part of this discuss thing is that wherever this discussion in the plan shows up about Route 6, and I think we've got a couple of places, it shows up I think in the business section, maybe the residential section, in the Route 6 section, that we cross-reference these to each other and keep saying, the plan recommends a study of Route 6, the plan recommends a study of Route 6. We're not going to solve it today, but we are going to point to the fact that the solution will be this study.
See what the state study shows, and we can, go on that.
Yeah.
See what they do first.
Oh, the expansion?
Yeah, the expansion.
Okay, yeah.
So should we redefine the area between Dunkin' Donuts and Stevens as the heart of Bristol?
Sorry.
Our new downtown.
Seems to be the heart of
Yeah.
Bristol.
Well, it's got arteries leading to it, is that what
It
you're going to...
certainly does. They're the main thoroughfares for this city and going in,
As long as you end up on Stevens Lot and you can sell you a car, you'll be happy.
Clogged clogged arteries on Saturday mornings.
Well, sometimes I'm trying to get over here for meetings, it's got clogged arteries and other things too.
Yeah, December, Christmas time, forget about it.
Arteriosclerosis.
that's what we have to go on.
Anything else on page 8?
Page, I don't see
No?
it.
Page 9?
Depict natural design.
Yeah, 77 and 78 are just mapping tweaks
Right.
to the
Yeah.
plan to help make it a little bit more readable and clarify the information that's on there.
And even 79, that's really just a map correction.
Well, we found,
Did you find them?
COG staff actually found, prior COG staff found an error in their map that we had printed in our plan. And before they sent their comments along, they're like, oh, wait a minute, that's not the right map. So they got us the right map.
So it's actually kind of funny.
It is
to
actually kind of
realize.
funny.
So this is the map that CCRPA had produced for Bristol, regional locational guide map, but downtown shows up as a white color, and white color shows up as conservation. What they had not done when they created this map was turned on the downtown, which is supposed to be the higher density, more intense area. So it looked like we were recommending the downtown be an open space preserve rather than what we're really intending. So they corrected that.
That'd be a good thing.
It's working.
Well, then you can't keep them.
That's it's new RPA now, so it's a whole new idea.
Yeah.
I don't see anything else.
And 84 was just a recognition that we're in a period of transition here.
Mhm.
And once the NDCOG pulls together a plan of conservation and development, a regional plan of conservation and development at the end of 2016, we can at that point in 2017 revisit the POCD and make an amendment to recognize the new plan. But Marie's going to be hard at work on that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you got elected to do that?
She did, but
She did?
they doubled her pay too.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow,
Twice as much vacation.
that was
yeah.
fast.
I'm glad we put you on that committee.
So I think if the commission, I don't think that we need a formal vote, but I think if we get consensus of the commission that what we've talked about here tonight in terms of the table,
Mhm.
I will go ahead, revise the plan document, and make a sort of an action-ready version. As we talked about earlier in the meeting, any prior changes will go to black, and all that will show up is Alan's edits for punctuation, grammar, so you can make sure that he was very careful. I think he did a good job. The new tables, additions, the forward, and other things will all go in showing red, so that when the commission receives this document, you don't have to read it from start to finish. You just focus in on everything and say, yes, I agree with that. I understand where this change came from and why. If there's things in there you don't like, as part of the meeting on the 24th, you can take them out. or if there's things that you think should be added in to clarify, you can go ahead and add those in. I won't be able to be at the meeting on the 24th, but I think with Alan and Bob and an action-ready version in front of you, it could be a fairly short element on your agenda. So.
And we would get that to you, obviously, electronically well in advance of the meeting.
So my goal is to get it done within a week, so you get at least a week to review it. So by next Wednesday, hopefully it's going to be in your inbox or whatever else Bob and Alan decide to do in terms of distribution.
Sounds good.
That works?
Good.
Okay.
Did that cover the next
Do
step?
you want to just maybe do a motion that you're in agreement with the document that was discussed and the changes that were, or something just kind of very inclusive and
I move the planning commission
direct?
direct and approve the general.
Just that the motion be request the preparation of an action-ready version of the POC. Right, just-
Got that? Got that? Write it down. It's coming out of my mouth.
Here I am struggling.
Thank you.
He's just sitting there. And no. Request the preparation of a updated version of the POCD, reflecting the comments at the public hearing and our discussion tonight for the commission's review prior to the meeting on the 24th.
Yeah, that kind of.
There was a
And just put
motion.
down that
Second.
Marie said that
Is there a
verbatim.
second? Yes, there was a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, there's a few things.
Barring none, all in
Do we have a
favor?
quorum to vote?
Yes, three.
Okay.
This is it.
All in favor, aye?
Once Alan left, we had a quorum.
And now motion to adjourn if you're still in play.
Did we have a motion to start? Yes, motion
Yes.
to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are these the final photos